Welcome to Longterm. I'm your host, Ty King, and you have found yourself on a podcast where we talk about some of the most incredible types of stories that people have gone through. I know if you're listening to this, if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you somehow caught a glimpse of this on social media, then you probably are a type of person where you're like, I've gone through some things myself, but it's just not, encouraged for us to talk about it, in public, right? And so that stigma of like, if you've been through something traumatic, you don't really talk about it in public because it's not polite or it's not allowed or you get judged for it, right? And so we're kind of scared to deal with those briefcases in our closet. And it kind of compounds. And the only way for us to actually get better is for us to unpack those things and to address them. And the best way, I think, to do that is to learn from other people and their stories, people that have gone through some really serious situations and come out on the other side very successful. And so that in between part is, I think, what's most important is like learning what were some of the methods that they use. And so as people are talking, as people come on this show, and like we're going to talk to Rissa, and she is an incredible person, incredibly accomplished, but also has gone through some things that have really stuck with her and her amazing story. You're going to kind of be baffled at, but when she's talking, she's probably going to say some things that she doesn't even realize are impactful for you. Right. And that's called tacit knowledge. That's when we talk about our experience and we just assume that everybody else knows because we live it on a daily life. But in reality, it's something that's really impactful that other people need to learn. And so I really look forward to talking with Rissa and getting into a story. So Rissa, August, you are in the year 2026 right now. Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I made it.
I
I
hope
made
so.
it.
You made it. So how do you define Rissa now in this year? Who is Rissa August?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Uh, she gets more and more curious, so very curious just about life, her personal evolution, the world around her, relationship dynamics, all of that. So super curious, and inquisitive, never wants to stop learning. And I get more and more humble as well, humbled
Mm,
by life and experiences, but excited, just excited for all of it to come my way. So yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna spend more time with that in my personal time. That's a great
there we go.
question. Who is
We had to start it off with a question that you hadn't had yet. You've done hundreds of podcast episodes before, and I'm like, we're not going to ask the same questions. Very interesting that you didn't mention at all athleticism or your very active lifestyle. I know that's a huge part of your past, so that might be where people might know you better. So you've got a history of being in a lot of sports, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I see that as those are things I do. Um,
Mm.
but I've learned to break out of the kind of role of that's who I am.
Yeah.
Those are things I do. So yeah, yeah. So lots of yes. I was a fitness fanatic, and when
Yeah.
we talk about, I was thinking about before I came on your show and about just kind of addiction and codependent behavior. That was probably mine. Um, Crazy fitness fanatic.
Yes, absolutely. So if people don't know, so you've been, I mean, like so many different things, an award-winning author, screenwriter. I've got your list of things right here right in front of my face. TEDx speaker, uh, Gestalt practitioner. I'm not really sure what that is, and we can get
Yeah.
into it. Traveled to 26 countries all around the U.S. and an Ironman athlete and obsessive CrossFitter. So I mean, that's quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, I guess I should put in there slight overachiever as well. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And we were talking before we even started this podcast episode, about how like you can look at someone and pass them by, or like we see this, right? We see all of the different things that you've accomplished, and like that's your resume. It's made to make you look like you're the best at what you do in the fields that you're in, right? Something like you're a public speaker, but you're also very athletic, and you're competing in the Ironman. But we look at that and we're like, oh, this person is just like, you're on a different plane. You're a different different type of person, right? You're built differently to where you succeed in all these different areas, and must not have like faced any kind of adversity along the way. But I know that that's not true because we talked a little bit before here, and that's why I'm excited to sort of talk to you about your process of your story. So let's go back a little bit. And so you're from the United States, right?
Yep, I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio. Very, a dysfunctional household, alcoholic father and narcissistic mother,
Mm,
and with an older brother who I think struggles with some of that to this day. But I kind of took a different route and stayed quiet, did what I could. If I behaved and did everything right, then maybe I could bring the peace or fly under the radar. I don't know. Like it was survival at that point. But
yeah,
yes, that's kind of where it started.
that's incredible. So, like, when you're dealing with, a narcissistic parent, and I just had this conversation with a friend yesterday when she was talking about, her dad was the narcissist in her family, right? And so, like, it kind of made a sour relationship with him because anytime she told a story about herself, he would have to one up it, like he had done it before and done it better. Was that kind of your experience with your mom?
Yeah, similar. There was some of that for sure. Yes, absolutely. Yep. It was all about her and how I made her look to her
Yeah,
friends and things like that.
yeah. So growing up in Cleveland, and then did you stay there throughout high school, or?
I could not wait to leave there. So I left when I was 21 and kind of traveled the world and the country, and I would find like a job in Australia and work there until I made enough money to travel to the next place,
Wow, that's awesome.
um, and I do that around the US as well. So yeah, I think there was I was a kid who loved the Indiana Jones movies growing
Uh,
up, so I had some kind of adventurous, spark in me, and I think that's what part of that was.
that's incredible. So you made your way around to 26 countries. Was that during that time, or you knocked it out of quite a few?
Yeah, that was a lot of it, but, later in life, when how we kinda get stuck in our lives and suddenly you look back and you're like, "Wait a minute, but I used to love to do that thing. Why did I stop doing that thing?" And so it became a non-negotiable. I was gonna always have travel again, and so later in life, I picked that up again and, started traveling a lot again later.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
where did you land at whenever you like took the hiatus from traveling everywhere? Were you back in the U.S.
I
at that point?
landed
Or
in
were you staying?
Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, I landed in Colorado. Yeah, got married and, um, yeah, kinda g 'cause this could be a long conversation, so I'm not gonna dive too far. I just kinda landed there, and I thought that was the life I was gonna live,
Yeah.
until one day I was like, "Wait a minute, where did I go? What happened to
Yeah.
me?" So,
So you went from
yeah.
this world traveler and sort of, doing jobs here and there until you can make it to the next country to what was life like when you went to California or Colorado whenever you were like, what is this that I am now?
Yeah, so I got a I got married, I was working a 9 to 5 job and, lived with my husband and our 2 dogs in the mountains. Is beautiful, and, um, but I started noticing that I wasn't really living life on my terms.
Yeah.
So kind of like the way my life was down to, okay, well, we grocery shop on Sundays, and when we vacation, it has to look a certain way,
Yeah.
and it was and I was like, "But I don't wanna eat turkey burgers again this week," like, and I
Yeah.
know that sounds silly, but it was these small things I started noticing of like, "Wait a minute, but is that what I want?" And so, came this big diagnosis and, that forced me to really reflect on my life and ask myself some pretty hard questions, you
Yeah,
know?
when everything in life becomes sort of, pre-boxed for you, I mean, I'm the same way where it's like, I've got to have my autonomy. Like, I can't be just stuck in a rut, living the same day over and over and over and over. And then it's like, where is the exploration? You were talking about the Indiana Jones movies, right? And so where it's constantly adventure and you don't know what to expect, or anything, and there's lots of danger and lots of risk to take, but like you enjoy life, you experience new things all of the time. Um, yeah, I completely, can relate to that. To where like I have to have that. I've got to be able to um experience new things and not be as predictable, you know what I mean? Because that, I don't know, it's just the way I'm wired. It seems like you're the same way. So you're living in Colorado, married, two dogs, and life is incredibly predictable, which is the opposite of what you've been doing for
Yeah.
so long.
Yes, and I wanted to bring up too, because there was a time in my 20s where I was living in my tent and working on a farm,
Yeah,
and I thought I heard you mention that, it might have been different circumstances, but you lived in your tent for a while too, and there was unknowns, and it didn't always pan out perfectly, but
yeah,
nonetheless, it was still an experience worth having.
right.
But
Yes,
yes.
yes, absolutely. What changed for you? I mean, obviously you're not still there. I don't think you're calling from Colorado now.
I'm in Colorado, but I consider it, I'm living on my own. I consider it more of a home base um, than a home. Like,
Got you.
it's where I
Yes.
check
That's
in
a
and leave again.
That's how I consider where I live too. So I live in Arkansas, but like it's a landing spot. You know what I mean? Like I'm always traveling. I'm in Florida right now. This is my hotel, and like after this, I'm gonna go out to the beach. But like I'll eventually make it home to back there for a couple of days. Then I'm like I gotta get out again. I gotta go do something else and go see somewhere else I've never been before. So, what made you? I guess like something must have happened to where you changed because you've lived a lot of life since then.
Yeah, so, I just finished my second Ironman race, and, a friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to ride 500 miles around Oregon with me?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, of course I do." And, but I started notice there was about a 7-month gap in between that when I finished that Ironman, and then we were gonna embark on this, ride, and I just started noticing changes in my body that I couldn't explain,
Mm,
and I wasn't recovering from exercise or workouts.
yeah,
I on about 40 pounds, like, in, like, 5 or 6 months, like, crazy amount of weight, even though I ate a very rigid diet and
sure.
worked out, so it was just kind of this weird time, so I that's kinda when this pivotal moment started, but it took 7 years from that point
Wow.
to get diagnosed with a massive tumor at the base of my brain and this gnarly disease that comes with it and destroys the body over
Whoa.
time. But that was my identity. I was like, "What do you mean I'm this super athlete that does, like, insane, intense things, and I climb mountains, and I back squat 210 pounds," and, like, it was like, Who am I now?" Like,
Yeah.
if I'm not doing all those things.
Right. Yeah. So you said it took 7 years to get diagnosed?
It took 7 years, and because I was so in tune with my body, like, I kept going to I never went to doctors, but I kept going back to the doctor. I'm like, "Look, something's off here."
Mm,
And, um, and I would hear things like, "Your blood work's fine. I'm not worried. You're probably overtraining. You're probably not drinking enough water. You're an athlete. We're not worried." Everything came back normal. but I knew I was like, and so again, I was 40 pounds heavier. I was still working out like I always did, 2 a days, like kind of neurotic about it. And I felt like people were starting to look at me like, sure, you're not putting down bags of potato chips and, tubs of ice cream. Like I really thought people were maybe thinking I was making
Yeah.
it up, and I knew I wasn't. But it almost felt like didn't almost feel. I started feeling like, okay, maybe I am crazy. I
Yeah.
started going to Overeaters Anonymous because my friend said, "Oh, I think you're in denial and you have an eating disorder."
Yeah.
I have struggled with eating disorders in the past, but the other way, anorexia and orthorexia. So they're like, you can be I don't exercise bulimic. Like I was like, okay, okay, yeah, maybe this is it. And I would sit in those OA meetings, and I'd be like, but I'm not relating to what these people are saying.
Yeah.
So it was just this long journey of starting to think I was crazy.
Right. Oh, it's interesting that you went to, yeah, overeating, like those groups, but like you knew that you weren't overeating. And so was it just to try to get like their perspective, or like what they were dealing with?
Well, again, 7 years of being told you're fine, nothing's
Yeah.
wrong with you. I
Right.
really started to think I must be in denial then. I must not be eating right. I had training coach. I fired her because I couldn't recover from my workouts. So I thought,
Yeah.
okay, must be her. She's programming the wrong stuff for me. Like I was really desperate trying to find answers. But I hired another coach, nothing was changing. So I really started to think I'm okay, I must not be taking care of myself. And I mean, I was at a loss of what to do. Like hair growth was changing on my body, not to sound like make anyone uncomfortable here,
Yeah,
but
very good.
I'm Romanian. Maybe that's what happens when you age as a Romanian. Like I was really pulling for something like answers out of like nowhere. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
So, I mean, we were going to these, doctor visits and, seeing physicians, and like, did they ever do like a scan on your brain and never caught it?
Well, here's what the turning point was. After my next Ironman race, I couldn't recover. I couldn't get off the couch.
So you were
I
still
s- wa-
doing Ironman even though you were already not able to recover?
I was
Oh my
barely getting
gosh.
through
Can't believe
races. And again, I thought I was doing something wrong and like training wrong or something. But I was having such severe headaches and I couldn't get off the couch. So I started looking at adrenal fatigue, the HPA axis. I'm like, ugh, there's even something called post Ironman depression. But I had these severe headaches. And so I went back to the doctor and I said, can we just order an MRI? I want to rule everything out. And she
Yeah.
told me no. She said no. And then I said, but I really want to I hope it comes back normal. I just want a peace of mind here. And she said, I don't think you need one and they're too expensive anyways. And I sat there and I almost was like, okay, I must not be drinking enough water or something. And then something in me that day, this was the moment everything shifted for me and I found my voice and my calling started heading in that direction. I said, order me the MRI.
Mhm.
And she turned around to her computer, was shaking her head and said, okay, I don't think you need one. And a week later, we found a massive tumor at the base of my brain. And I remember thinking, well, first I had no idea what it was. But then when I was finally diagnosed, I was like, I knew it. But
Mm.
I dropped an F bomb with that.
Yeah.
I validation was overwhelming. I
Yeah.
mean, I was bawling because I knew it. I knew I wasn't crazy. Um, and I have a chapter in my book about it because there's just something like I knew I wasn't crazy, and it was a really profound moment for me, to move forward in life. So anyone who's listening, like, if there's something in you that just doesn't feel right or in alignment, like, trust that. Just
Yeah.
trust it and do whatever it takes. Ask questions, do what you have to do. Talk to people, go to different people if you have to, and get that validation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been a recurring theme. We've recorded several episodes today, and that's about the third time that that's come up, where it's like, listen to your body, because your body's going to tell you, before anybody else can, and that deals with like emotional, but also physical. Yeah, really, really important to listen to your body. Even when the doctors are telling you there's nothing wrong, yeah, insist that you get checked out. That's incredible. So, what was that process like past that point? Once they identified it, did you go through some sort of treatment?
Yeah, so I learned I had to have brain surgery, which is a weird thing to hear. Um, and and then after brain surgery, you kind of find out the next steps. But the I call her old Rissa was like, okay, well, let's just hurry up and get it over with because
Yeah.
I have a life to get back to. I have so much overachieving. I have to go get done. So that was my kind of mentality at that point. But about 3 months post brain surgery is when I knew my life. They told me we couldn't get the entire tumor. Um, you have this very destructive disease, and
Mhm.
I knew I couldn't get off the couch. It was that moment I knew nothing would ever be the same again,
Yeah.
not just physically, but cognitively, emotionally, mentally, all of it. And that was so there was some grief work in there that I had to, you're letting go of something like the only thing you ever knew. You're this, but wait a minute, I was this person and I'm never going to be that person again. It's
Right.
it's really it's really interesting place to be.
Absolutely. So, what did look like after you were? So they took most of it out, but they didn't take all of it out. So there's still some now, or
Yeah, so what happens a lot, it grows into a part of the skull, and tends to get wrapped around the carotid artery, which is fairly common with this type of tumor diagnosis if you don't catch it in time. So I've probably been living with it for more than a decade, um, but but I didn't notice symptoms until about 7 years before I got diagnosed. So it tends to grow around the carotid artery and close to the optic nerve, which makes it inoperable. In the meantime, it's still causing the disease called acromegaly that comes with it, and essentially it destroys the body over time. So, uh, so you just have no choice, and you see and feel your body changing, and you have no control over it.
yeah. Wow. So are you still physically active today? And are you recovering?
I Not like I was. I rode, I was trying to hold on to that part of me for a long time, and I went trekking in Peru over the Salcantay Pass, and then last year I rode my bike across northern Spain. I did
Mm.
a solo trip, and, and that was kind of, another turning point in my life of I don't think my body can do this anymore. It was an extremely challenging trip, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it was kind of this, "Okay, Riss, like, it's okay. Why don't you bike for enjoyment now? Like, why don't you why don't you find some fun in this?" And so I still bike, but I do, like, short distances or, I just do things I enjoy now, as opposed to this kinda grinding, okay, I got to top the last one, because before that I rode my bike from Canada to Mexico down the Pacific coast, it's kind of that overachieving mentality that we touched on earlier. It's like I kept
Yeah.
thinking I had to do something harder and better, and I don't know who I was trying to prove what to, but maybe it was a step in my um that stage of grief of acceptance. It's
Hmm.
like, grief's a funny thing. It kind of comes and goes.
Right. And so, how did you? I mean, obviously, you found inspiration in taking your story, sort of on the road because I mean, you've been on lots of these, lots of podcasts and told the story, and you've got a book out, and even on stage. I mean, you're a public speaker. Uh, how did, when, like, what was the turn there, where you were like, okay, now I'm ready to tell my story? Like, what was the motivation, and how did you start doing that?
Gosh, well, first there was a turning point. Again, another very clear moment. It was a decision I made in this moment. I was sitting on my sofa. It's this large brown leather sofa, and I had been wearing these tattered gray sweatpants for months, and it was about 6 months post surgery. And I remember thinking, I really did. It's going to sound dramatic, but I remember thinking, this is no way to live.
Mm,
Like, if I sit here on this couch and binge watch another Netflix show for one more day, I feel
yeah.
like I'll die. I feel like I will just, my light will go out and
Yeah.
I'll die. And
Right.
as dramatic as it sounds, that's how it felt. Um, and so, yeah, and that's where that was the probably one of the biggest turning points for me was, okay, well then what can I do? And I started asking the questions like, who can I be? What's out there for me in this new Rissa? And so that was actually also the day I decided I needed something to live for. So I signed up for that day. I signed up for a 1,845-mile bicycle journey from Canada to Mexico, and I
Whoa.
had 14 months to figure out how to get off that couch and get my butt to the
Yeah.
Canadian and U.S. border. Uh, and that's where it started. I mean, still in that phase, I just was this girl trying to figure it all out, and I had to do this bike ride for me. But that actually is what started the patient advocacy journey, speaking on stages, writing a memoir, all of that. So, but it was a clear decision that day.
Mm.
Like I wanted to live.
How did you get started with your public speaking? Did it start with your book? Did you write that first, and then you started going on tour?
Yeah. So, I there was some organizations and companies started reaching out to me because they heard about this girl with acromegaly who's going to ride her bike from Canada to Mexico, and they were like, "What, you're doing what? And you have what?" And um I still didn't understand like that it was that big a deal, because I still had that athlete mindset. But there was a lot to navigate, and I was dealing with a body I didn't understand. But anyways, people started asking me they were like, "You're so inspiring, and can you share your story?" And I was like, "What?" Like, I still, it wasn't computing. I didn't see myself as an inspiration at all. To
Yeah.
me, I was surviving because, I was trying to survive. Um, and then so people started talking about this bike ride I was doing, and I remember being mad about it at first because I was like, "You're missing the point here. There's this
Right.
disease, and it's believed that 1 in 5 people are walking around with these tumors, and that's what we gotta pay attention to." And, because suddenly I had this new voice, and doctors need to listen, and it just kind of evolved from there, and then people are like, "Well, you need to do a TEDx talk," and, "Oh my gosh, you're so inspiring," and I always wanted to write a book, and I felt like, "Okay, this is the story. This is the time, this is the story," and, um, so yeah, it kind of just unfolded.
Wow, that's great, man. So, how did you feel? Because I know, like, you were sort of surprised when people approached you, and I asked this, keep asking you questions about this because I know so many people that have been through, extraordinary circumstances, and like they are still, intimidated about, writing a book or getting, especially about getting up on stage in front of people and telling their story. Like they may, jump on something like this because it's kind of a safe place where, you can talk and I'll do all the editing. And so we don't have to worry about, messing up or starting, false starts or, if you get too emotional. But there's something intimidating about, being a public speaker, especially. But even like writing a book where it's like, I don't know if anybody wants to listen to my story. I don't really find myself to be inspirational, but knowing that they have something to go through and, I don't know, it's kind of, from your taking your experience of, you went through this in life and you yourself, like you just said, I was just surviving. I wasn't, trying to set out to be this inspirational figure or like, and that's, I don't know if you've got an ego like that. I know your mom does, but I don't know if you do. Where it's like, I'm not that person, you know what I mean? Where it's like, but you realize what kind of good it can do for other people whenever you talk about your story and what you've been through, which is, of course, the whole premise of this podcast. So, what was it like for you, once you were up on, in front of people and talking about your story?
Gosh, there's two things I want to say here.
Yeah.
Um, the first thing, sharing my story has been so healing for me. Especially, I was always the one in the background and quiet, and you know, I don't even know if I ever explored my emotions until I became an adult. And now it was so scary being vulnerable and on
Mhm.
stage and sharing this, but what I noticed was afterwards how healing it felt, like how every time I felt a little lighter and a little
Right.
lighter, and so so yeah, that's kind of I almost did it for the selfishness of that, of like, "Oh my gosh, this is so healing for me."
Yeah.
Um, but then people started saying, "Well, and you're inspiring." And so so that was incredible as well. Um, but then I went on to, okay, well, maybe everyone's like, "You should be the speaker," and so I went on to join Toastmasters and National
Okay.
Speaker Association, and what I learned though, and there's this beautiful gift is once I'd let go of being polished and perfect, like a lot of these organizations,
Mm.
kinda train you to be, once I let go of all that, I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, I'm doing it my way." And I'm gonna
Yes.
say the ums, and I'm gonna be
Yeah.
awkward, and I'm gonna be expressive with my hands and say and 3,000,000 times, like, once I let go of the polished perfectionist ideal, oh my gosh, it's way more fun. I enjoy it. You can edit my weird, quirky stuff out if you need to,
No, it adds to it. It's the whole experience, you know?
exactly. I don't I like who I am. I like that I'm weird and fun and all of that. And so once I really started appreciating who I was, I and show up with that authenticity, I think other people were more drawn to that as well. So, yeah, it's way more
Yeah,
fun being
absolutely.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, I feel like, you're it's cathartic that you're, talking like that, but like that's how I feel about hosting this is like, yeah, we're talking about like probably some of the most traumatic stuff that a lot of these guests have ever experienced, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like you said, I'm healing from this is to, you know what I mean? It's not just putting on a show for other people. It's not just getting information or reporting or, whatever you call it. I don't consider myself to be a journalist. I'm a broken person who needs a lot of healing. And this is part of the process is learning from other people who have come up out of these situations. And like, while we're having this conversation, I keep them, you know what I mean? Like those stories stay with me. After I'm done editing and I process it and post it, and like, it doesn't just leave my mind. Like those stories stick with me and I think about them all the time. And help me be better and help me heal from a lot of different things. And so I'm sure it's same way with you every time you have to reiterate your story. You've done it so many times now. Yeah,
Well, and most humans, I've also learned, they're rooting for you. They're cheering for you. So, especially when you show up authentic and vulnerable and real, man, most people on the planet or in the audience, like they want to be there for you and support you and hold that space for you. And so I just love that. People are good. People are good.
for sure. Absolutely. Rissa, thank you so much for being willing to come on and share your story. I know it's a lot, right? So you went through a ton, and it's so hard to fit all of that into like a 30-minute, little talk about our home life. There's a lot of years in between, a lot of different details and stories we don't really get to tell. But I think you said some things here that were really impactful, and can be helpful for other people that are going through similar situations. It may not be the exact same circumstances, but it's something that where they need to hear this right now. You know what I mean? Because they're at that point in their life. And so I really appreciate you. So this is the concept of the show being called long term. I named it this because I wanted to find long term solutions for a lot of the things that we need to heal from. And so I'm going to ask you the question I ask everyone, but more targeted towards you in your specific situation. You mentioned that time whenever you were, in the tattered gray sweatpants, and like you're sitting there just, I'm going to die if I watch another Netflix binge. You're like, I've got to do something with my life because this is not me. This is not who I am. This is not being authentic to me. And I've got to do something. And then you signed up for that, all the way from Canada to Mexico bike ride, which is insane goals, by the way. That was that was ambitious to say the least. But for other people who might find themselves in that same position, to where maybe they're at that point where that version of Rissa was sitting there and just sort of like realizing I'm rotting here. Like, this is not being me. This is not who I am, and I've got to do something. What do you say to somebody that might be in that position now?
Wow. Yeah, I love this question, and I'll try to be graceful in answering it. But I remember for me in that moment, I was so focused on I can't do this anymore, but I can't do that anymore, and I can't do that anymore. And I was focused on this thing, this person I no longer was. I had I had to change it up, and
Yeah.
I changed it up to one simple question. One word, actually. I asked myself, well, what can I do? And that meant I took the word can and I turned it into a mantra. And I used each letter from the word can, capable, able, now. What am I capable and able to do now in this moment? And I wasn't able to get to the Canadian US border and ride 1,800 miles in that moment. But in that moment, I could get off that couch. I had to simplify it so much. It came down to I can get off the couch today. I can get out of these sweatpants
Mhm.
today. Maybe it was putting on a pair of yoga pants, but at least it was no longer the
Right.
sweatpants. And I actually started painting before I got back on my bike. I painted for like 3 months because it took my mind away from what I couldn't do.
Mm.
And now I actually sell my art around the world. I don't even consider myself an artist, but again, it was a step in the process of okay, what can I do? What can I do now? Like, we're all capable and able to do something, even in those really hard moments, even if it's a matter of, well, I can get out of bed today.
Yeah.
Great. So
Yes.
ask yourself, what can I do? What
Yeah.
can I
Those
do in this
those
moment?
small things add up to something very, very large. Yeah, I can completely relate to that. That's amazing.
Ah, well,
Awesome.
you got to share. How can you relate? Was there a moment in your life?
Well, for sure. I mean, I know you don't know my full story, but I was in prison for 12 years. And yeah, saw my best friend at the time got into a fight and he ended up killing the guy in the fight. I didn't report it. And then I ended up in prison for 12 years because of not reporting that. And so you find yourself in a situation where I don't care like how long you go to jail or prison. It's not fun. I mean, it's about like how it looks in the movies or TV, where you're in there and you're questioning absolutely everything. How did I get here? Like, I may not have, done whatever it is that they, or that the is covered under the charge because we have a lot of those in the U.S. laws, right? And so there are lots of things that have titles that don't necessarily mean what they sound like they mean. And so, but like, it's like, well, I was doing other things that could have gotten me in here, or like, I absolutely didn't have control of my life. You know what I mean? At the very least. At the very least, I was just, going along with what everybody else wanted, and that's where I ended up here. You know what I mean? I was there, I was present. I didn't stop anything from happening. I could have, if I would have had more control of my life, I could have not been there at all. And I was so sick with myself that I wanted to change, you know what I mean? And it was either because when you're in there, like you're gonna change one way or the other. You either are going to be worse or you're gonna be better. And if you don't do anything, you're gonna be worse, or you can actively be worse. But you can't do nothing and then not end up better. And so you have to actively do that. And I wrote down kind of like a character sheet. I don't know if you've ever like seen like D&D or like a Dungeons and Dragons or that type of thing. Is I played it like one time, but it left an impression on me where I was like, okay, people make these character sheets and they come up with this whole different persona, and like level 10 on each one of these skill sets is what you're working towards. Like that's the highest level, like in intelligence and charisma and knowledge and humor, and like there's all these different things. So I was like, okay, well, what is level 10 for Ty? The Ty that I want to be. What is the highest level in all of these things? What does that look like? And I started defining them. And so those were my big goals. And then I split it up into 10 smaller goals. And so, like you were just talking about, what can I do? What can I do right now? I can change my pants. You know what I mean? And for me, it was like, well, I can learn how to say a basic sentence in Spanish. I can, learn about other world religions and get exposed to culture. I can try practicing having, small talk with people so that I can get my conversation skills up. And it practices empathy. And so there's a lot of different things. And so there's those small steps to add up to like where you are. And then like, once I get to 10, which I did on quite a few of those things, it's like, well, now I just got to raise the bar again. And so now what does level 10 of this look like? And so you go back to square one and just keep improving yourself all throughout life. And I think if you're not doing that, you're doing disservice to yourself and everyone else around you, right? Because if we're not working on being the absolute peak best version of ourselves, then you're going to get stagnant and you're going to find yourself in those situations like you were talking about where you're just sort of unhappy, because it doesn't feel like you are being yourself and you're not fulfilling everything that you possibly could.
It's very similar. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I would say, people may not have gone through your exact situation, but there are tons of people that are in a very same, mental place that need to hear a lot of the things that you said today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be on, the podcast and talking with us here, so that we could help, reach more people in our audience, help them. And so, yeah, thank you, Rissa, for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What an incredible experience. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
So glad. And thank you for listening. If you're on one of the audio podcast platforms, you can find us on YouTube. Look for Longterm, a podcast in recovery, and vice versa. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find us on all of the podcast platforms from Apple to iHeart to Spotify, you name it, wherever you listen to your podcast. And Rissa, where can people find, if they wanted to keep up with you, where could they go for that?
Oh gosh, yes, you can go to my website. I put everything on there. It's Rissa with one S, Risa, August, just like the month.com. Yep, and all things Rissa.
Incredible. And we'll put those in the show notes for the show and in the description of the YouTube video. And so look for that so you can follow Rissa. The call to action, which always comes at the end of the show, right? We always say that we like the comments and we like the subscribes and likes and reviews and all that stuff, that's great because it feeds the algorithm. It helps us spread the show a little bit further. But the main important thing is that you're taking the message, like what Rissa shared here today. If you're listening to this and then you had somebody come to your mind that needs to hear this message, share the episode. That's the absolute best thing that you can do. It helps, get the message to the people that need to hear it, for one. But also, like, the worst thing that can happen is that they don't listen to it. But the best thing that can happen is it might save their life. And it's just one little simple thing of just sharing a message. And sometimes that's all we need in order to give us a new, hold and get control of our life, is to hear from somebody else. Hey, you can do it. And like Larissa just said here, like those little things. What can I do? Somebody out there, guaranteed, needs to hear that. So share this episode. And thank you for going along with me on this journey of healing yourself and listening to these incredible stories and learning from people who have been there, and come out on the other side, successful and growing into better people all the time. So with that, I will see you in the next episode.